these clowns and all these. But boy, if you really get to live this last 20 years that I lived, you would understand, boy. I put everything on the line for this. And I took it with a smile. Even when niggas doubted me, niggas downed me, when I was on trial and niggas told me I need to take the plea. Take what plea? We don't take pleas, nigga. You heard? By the grace of God, the trial gets dismissed because they couldn't find enough evidence of a shootout that happened on Uptown over Cameron.
Jim Jones is one of the most influential rappers in the history of hip-hop. Since the early 2000s, Jim Jones been working hard putting out music. Not only did he make classic songs and introduce the world to New York gangbanging, but he has a huge influence on hip-hop fashion. Jim Jones is considered to be one of the best-dressed rappers in hip-hop history. He's responsible for starting the whole rap rock star trend. His fashion IQ and gang affiliation is what made fans attracted to the Diplomats. After releasing 8 solo albums, a dozen of collaborative albums, and countless mixtapes, Jim Jones is now the #1 East Coast rapper in the game. He has a net worth of around $10 million. Went from being a hype man, background dancer, bodyguard, and manager to now being a legendary rapper.
Like that, every time you see me in the news, it was over Diplomats. When I get sued and shit like that, it be over Diplomats. When I'm kicking ass, when I come to the club 30 deep, it did what? It made the Diplomats look good. You heard? When I'm banging blood, it was good for them, right? It was good when it was good for them. You heard? When it wasn't good for them, oh, nobody wanted to be a part of the Bloods. But when the Bloods became popping and it became the notoriety of the Blood started becoming, oh, everybody want to turn blood.
This is the Jim Jones story. Joseph Jones II was born on July 15, 1976 in Manhattan, New York, at the Flower Fifth Avenue Hospital. His mother is Aruban, and his father was Puerto Rican. Jones' mother's side of the family left Aruba and came to America in the 60s and 70s. He lost his father at an early age to HIV. Most of Jones' family moved to NYC in boroughs such as the Bronx, Queens, and even Harlem. Jones temporarily lived in the 1199 Plaza in East Harlem with family members and attended St. Anne the Personal School. St. Anne was a Catholic school, elementary, and middle school. On the second floor at the 1199 Plaza, a 6-year-old Jones meets a 11-year-old future entrepreneur, Damon Dash. Jones later moved to the Bronx on 237th of Furman White Plains Road. According to Jones, his family were one of the only black families in the neighborhood. Jones later relocated to Weeks Avenue. At an early age, Jones watched his mother, uncles, and aunts deal and use drugs. Growing up in a rough neighborhood, Jones had to learn how to fight. His mother, Nancy, nicknamed him Joe, and his grandmother gave him the nickname Jomo. Jomo is an acronym for Joy of Missing Out. The nickname stuck with Jones when he got older. A young Jomo attended church every Sunday with his grandmother. He attended Cardinal Hayes High School for Boys, a private school located in the Bronx. There, him and Freaky Zeke reunites. The two had first met back in the 3rd grade at St. Anne the Personal School. Jomo and Freaky Zeke sold candy at school to buy new sneakers and clothes. The two became close friends. Not only did they both love sneakers, but they both loved to fight as well. They would often get into brawls and even sometimes get beat up together. Jomo would later start working at the corner store in the neighborhood. According to Jomo, he even began dealing crack on the side. He graduated from high school a year early and began working at a law firm. No, Jomo wasn't a lawyer or anything. He was a part of a program that gave inner city kids part-time jobs. After working at the law firm for a few months, Jomo quit and became a full-time drug dealer. He was now living with his grandmother on the east side of Harlem in Taft Housing Projects in apartment 5H. His cousin Doe lived a few buildings down. Doe made sure that Jomo was good in the projects. Taft houses became Jomo's home. At the time, it was dangerous hanging out in the projects. Jomo witnessed a lot of shootings and murders in the neighborhood. It didn't take him long to make a name for himself in the streets. Fist fights and shootouts were common for a young wild Jomo. Sometimes he would even call Freaky Zeke to come help him fight with Cruz. Around this time, Jim befriends an up-and-coming rapper from Harlem who went by the name Killer Cameron. The two had met at the 1199 Plaza Recreation Center years prior. Cam lived in the plaza with his grandparents. Cameron, back then known as Flea, was known in Harlem for being a good basketball player. Many thought that he was going to the NBA. Cam was kicked out of Navarro Junior College after pistol whipping someone. When Cam returned to Harlem, he began making music with his childhood friends Derek Armstead, also known as Bloodshed, Mason Betha, then known as Murder Mace, and an up-and-coming producer who went by the name Six Figure Digger. After Cam was featured on Big L's 1995 debut album Lifestyles of the Poor and Dangerous, the Harlem-based rap group Children of the Corn, also known as COC, was born. The group consisted of Big L, Herb McGruff, Bloodshed, Murder Mace, and Killer Cam. Although the group only recorded a few songs together, COC was a big deal in Harlem. In 1995, Jomo's grandmother dies and leaves him her apartment. Due to Jomo not wanting to be alone, he would often invite his friends over to hang out. He would eventually invite Cam, Bloodshed, and Mace over. They all quickly became good friends with Jomo. Jomo's apartment became a hangout spot and a trap house. One day, Mace decided to teach Jomo how to rap. The two went into a bedroom, and Mace gave Jomo a simple breakdown on how to write bars. It took some time, but Jomo eventually caught on. Mace had mastered rapper Lord Finesse's rapping style. This same style was also used by both Big L and Cam as well. It took a while, but Jomo slowly became a decent rapper. Jomo's rap name became Jimmy Jones, a name he got from cult leader and mass murderer Jim Jones. The name was perfect for Jomo at the time because the whole rap crew had violent names. Mace was Murder Mace, Derek was Bloodshed, and Cam was Killer Cam. Their deadly names represented their hardcore rapping styles. Bloodshed and Jimmy became really tight. The two had been knowing each other since the early 80s, back when they both lived in the 1199 Plaza. Bloodshed, Cam, and Mace practically lived with Jimmy. Although Mace lived with his manager Kuda Love at the time, he still spent a lot of time at Jimmy's. In 1996, Mace signs a record deal with Bad Boy Entertainment. Even after signing the deal, Mace continues to hang out at Jimmy's. Jim didn't only want to rap. He wanted to act and direct films and music videos as well. In 1996, he made a cameo appearance on the Fox hit show New York Undercover. This was a big deal to Jim. Around this same time, Mace takes Cam to Biggie's house in hopes of getting him a record deal. After Cam raps for Biggie, Biggie plans to sign him to his new record label. But unfortunately, months later Biggie was shot and killed in Los Angeles. Cam was now depending on his best friend Mace. But according to both Cam and Jim, Mace began moving funny. Jim and Cam became even closer after Bloodshed died in a car crash on March 2, 1997. Mace was now living with his boss Sean Puffy Combs, working on both his and Puffy's albums. Whenever Mace came back to Harlem, Cam would hold him down in the streets. One time Cam had to rush to the Bronx to help Mace get out of a female's apartment because her boyfriend was standing at the door trying to get inside. Cam and a gang of others rushes up to the apartment and got Mace out safely. According to Cam, he pointed a gun at the guy's head. When Cam and Mace returned to Harlem, Mace gives Cam only $100 for his help. This made Cam very upset. Him and Jim would still go on the road with Mace to do shows. Not only were they his hype man, but they were his background dancers as well. Cam and Jim both wore matching outfits and did choreographed dance moves. This was making Cam one mad MC because he was ready to shine. Growing up, Cam was always the leader and Mace was the sidekick. Mace even wore Cam's hand-me-downs when they were younger. Mace was the man now. His debut album Harlem World was released October 28, 1997, and peaked at #1 on both the US Billboard 200 and on the US Top R&B Hip-Hop Albums charts, selling over 200,000 in its first week. Harlem World went on to sell over 4 million copies, making Mace the biggest rapper in the game at the time. Cam wasn't featured on the album. That surprised many people in Harlem. Around this time, Mace was no longer dealing with Jim because Jim was hanging out with some guys who were talking trash about him. A whole lot of jealousy began taking place. People in Harlem who wasn't getting broke off by Mace began hating on him. Many even planned to rob the 21-year-old rapper. When Cam and Mace's friendship began fading away, Cam and Jim's friendship grew stronger. While Mace was living life, Cam and Jim had to watch from Jim's apartment in Taft Projects. Cam was desperate for a record deal. Him and Jim were both still dealing drugs at the time. Even their old friend Damon Dash was making noise at the time with Rockefeller Records. Jay-Z was now on his second album in My Lifetime Volume 1. After Biggie died, Jay-Z crowned himself King of New York. Dame was only focused on his artist Jay-Z at the time. Many wondered why Cam didn't just sign with Rockefeller. The truth is, Dame and Cam weren't seeing eye to eye. Back when Cam was Mace's muscle, Dame and Mace were about to fight. But Cam stepped in with a baseball bat to protect Mace. That changed Cam and Dame's relationship. One day, Cam and Jim decided to go to the Lox video set. The Bad Boy rap group was filming the Always Love Big Papa video in Harlem. They didn't go there to pay their respects to a deceased Biggie. They went there to talk to Biggie's former business partner Lance Unwavering. According to Jim, he approached Lance and told him that Biggie was planning to sign Cam wrong. Lance knew about Biggie and Cam's conversation already, so he agrees to meet with Cam and work out a deal. Within weeks, Cam was signed to Lance's record label Entertainment and began working on his debut album, Confessions of Fire. Cam signed a horrible deal, receiving only $60,000. After moving to New Jersey and buying a car, Cam was pretty much broke. He still spent a lot of time at Jimmy's. Jim was now Cam's right-hand man. The two were together every day. According to Jim, he became Cam's muscle the same way Cam became Mace's muscle. Not only was Jim the muscle, but he was also Cam's assistant, road manager, and hype man as well. He stayed in the studio with Cam during the making of Confessions of Fire, and even was featured on the track, Me, My Moms, and Jimmy. On the song Horse and Carriage, Cam explains how tight him and Jim were. Jimmy understood that Cam was his ticket out of the hood. He knew that if Cam made it, he made it as well. So he did everything he could to protect Cam. Jim always been aggressive and didn't mind fighting. To help out with security, Jim brings in his childhood friend and Cam's cousin, Freaky Zeke. Freaky Zeke was the real definition of a crash out. Back then, he was down for whatever and Jim knew it. After recruiting Freaky Zeke and a few other street brawlers, Cam was well protected. Confessions of Fire was released July 21, 1998. Peaked at #6 on the US Billboard 200 and #2 on the US Top R&B Hip Hop Albums Billboard. It sold over 100,000 copies in its first week. 357 was the album's first single. Both Jimmy and Mace appears in the video. According to Mace, he wasn't paid for his appearance. When it was time to shoot the Horse and Carriage video, Mace wanted to be confiscated for his appearance. Cam didn't understand at the time why his best friend would charge him to be in the video. Both Cam and Jim were mad at Mace once again. By the late 90s, Jim was an active member of the NYC-based Blood gang, 9 Trey Gangsters. 9 Trey was the first blood set that was born in New York City. Back then, New York Bloods were looked at as fake bloods. But in New York City, the Bloods were really putting in work. In some neighborhoods, people could no longer wear the color blue. Teenagers were getting shot and stabbed just for wearing the wrong color. Taft Projects was now filled with bloods. Jimmy got jumped in. Around this time, Mace gets into it with 9 Trey member and kingpin Jermaine Rajan, also known as Baby J or Baby Maine. Mace had allegedly slept with or disrespected Baby J's baby mother. According to insiders, Baby J never liked Mace. At the time, Mace was on top of the world. He didn't look up to Baby J like most people in Harlem. Baby J allegedly puts a hit out on Mace. Mace now needed protection in Harlem, so he befriends a young, well-known shooter who went by the name Pop Lottie. Pop Lottie and Baby J began feuding. Baby J even cut Pop Lottie across the face, and Pop Lottie later shot Baby J 5 times. At the time, heroin was the #1 moneymaker in NYC. Baby J was allegedly the top H supplier in Harlem. Mace decided to move to Atlanta, Georgia, which was a smart move. Like I said earlier, Mace was a huge target in Harlem. Not only Baby J wanted the 23-year-old rapper dead, but many people were planning to rob Mace as well, including his former group mate Big L.
Like, that's why. And then to make a long story short, the guy was like, yo, the case was over. They gave us back the watch. And it was like a week later we found out that it was Big L. And I just messed up everything because I'm like, yo, this nigga's hating big time, bro.
Baby J even began attacking Mace artists because he couldn't get to Mace. Rapper Cardan, who was a member of the rap group Harlem World, All Out chain was snatched by Baby J at a basketball game. Baby J was a real killer. He caught his first known body when he was 17 years old. Back in 1991, he was sentenced to 4 years in prison for shooting a man to death. Baby J was one nasty boy. He was even cutting people in prison. In April of 1999, Mace announces his retirement on Hot 97 radio station. He was ready to turn his life over to Christ and become a pastor at an Atlanta church. On his sophomore album Double Up, Mace disses Baby J on a few tracks. This only made things worse. Bodies began dropping in the streets of Harlem. Jim was friends with both Baby J and Pop Lottie. Him and many other people in Harlem blamed Mace for starting the war that was taking place. Around this same time, Jim and Cam gets into it with the Junior Mafia crew at Rucker Park. This was around the time Jimmy started gang banging. Him and Junior Mafia member C Gutta, who's a Crip, had gotten into it months prior. According to insiders, Jimmy wanted to try C Gutta because C Gutta was a Crip. They ice grilled each other all night. Not long after that, the two ran into each other again in Hawaii. They were both out on the Puff Daddy and the Family Forever UK tour. This time, C Gutta attacks Jim. Shortly after the tour, C Gutta, along with a gang of other Crips, shoots at Jimmy and a group of Bloods. The two runs into each other once again at Rucker Park. This time, Jim punches C Gutta. The whole Junior Mafia crew attacks Jim. Cam tries to defuse the situation, but fails to do so. Jimmy pulls out a razor and manages to escape. He runs and jumps on top of a police van, forcing the Junior Mafia crew to walk away. While working on Cam's sophomore album, the crew were still deep in the streets. Cam had blown all of his deal money. Entertainment was now over and Cam was now signed to Sony. Jim was featured on 2 songs on the SDE album. Around this time, a 16-year-old by the name of Joel Santana came along and gave the crew a different sound. Check out the trailer to new horror movie. This movie is one of the darkest movies in cinema history. The cast in this movie were all allegedly hypnotized during the filming. Cast members were hospitalized, and some even died while making this film. A few cast members were arrested for murder and other violent crimes. This is the realest horror movie you'd ever see. Here's the trailer to Junior Heist.
I am now standing at the crime scene where 3 children were found dead early this morning. The 3 children were reported missing late Monday evening.
Mom, they'll find a serial killer soon. Watch. Rockburgers is way too small.
Yo, but we was this close to winning the championship, bro.
Oh my God, that's my mama's room.
I'll be there in like 5 minutes. What my guys and I saw this morning in the bathroom, it's gonna haunt us for the rest of our lives.
Night to remember, guys.
Let's make memories.
We found the heads in the sink. Took a while to match the heads to the bodies.
This marks the 29th homicide in a 3-month span here in Roxburgh.
Who the hell is junior high, sir?
Please don't kill me!
Right around the corner, open the door. Is everything gonna be alright, Sheriff?
Sure hope so, detective. Sure hope so.
I know this is gonna sound like a crazy question, but I gotta ask. You don't think junior heights came back, do you?
Alright, class, listen up. There'll be no school tomorrow. Unfortunately, the 3 girls that were missing found them dead in the bathroom. It's not a game. I'm scared.
I don't got no service, y'all. What you mean you got no service?
If you have any information about any of these homicides, please don't hesitate to contact the Roxburgh Sheriff's Department.
Job stressing me out, man.
Only in selective theaters, March 25th.
At first, people didn't look at Cam as a serious MC. He was looked at as some comedian kind of rapper. And people didn't look at Jimmy as a gangster back then. Jim would flaunt his long silky hair, and he was often seen acting silly in the background. Cam and Jim would do things such as play patty cake on stage. When Jewels came along, Cam became a more serious MC. The crew was now known as the Diplomats. SDE, Sports, Drugs, and Entertainment, originally titled the Rough album, was pushed back and wouldn't be released until October of 2000. In June of 2000, 28-year-old Baby J was shot and killed in Harlem, allegedly by Pop Lottie. Pop Lottie was later killed in Harlem as well. Many believe that it was retaliation for Baby J. People in Harlem blamed Mace for both Baby J and Pop Lottie's deaths. Some even alleged that Mace had Baby J killed and then left Pop Lottie in Harlem being a huge target. Jim pretty much blamed Mace for starting a war between Baby J and Pop Lottie. After the release of SDE, Cam was ready to leave Sony. Since the label refused to let him go, Cam got his friend Luca Brasi to get a gang of Bloods to come with him to the studio. Every day for months, Cam would come to the studio with 30 to 40 Bloods. Sony would eventually release him, and Cam would sign a deal with Rockefeller Records. Rockefeller was the biggest rap label in the game. Dipset made The Rock even bigger. Cam'ron's next album, Come Home With Me, went platinum. The Diplomats' Diplomatic Immunity album went gold, and Juelz Santana's first album, From Me to You, sold over 300,000 copies. Jim directed all of the Diplomats' early music videos. He gave the group a raw street look that attracted street people all around the world to the Diplomats. It was a big deal seeing a bunch of fly New York City Bloods in a music video. Although Cam didn't gangbang, it's obvious that he liked being around it. It made him look good, and it gained him more fans. Cam was the flyest Diplomat member at the time, hands down. Jim had more of a rugged, hanging out in the projects look. Back then, Jim always looked like he was up to something. He was slowly becoming a better rapper. In the beginning, Cam had written some of Jim's rhymes. When you listen to Jim on Confessions of Fire, you can hear Cam's rhyming style and Jim's flow. By the time Cam had signed to Rockefeller, Jim was a decent rapper and was writing his own rhymes. It was now Jim's turn to drop an album. He wanted $1 million deal. He went to talk to Dame Dash, and Dame laughed in his face. Dame didn't think that Jim was a good rapper at the time. Jim even tried to get signed to other labels such as Murder Inc., Bad Boy, and several other labels. No one took Jim serious. He would later sign an independent deal with Koch Records and release the single Certified Gangsters. Certified Gangsters became a minor hit. The song reached number 80 on the Hot R&B Hip-Hop Songs Billboard. Certified Gangsters made Jim Jones a popular rapper. It also made him some fans' favorite Diplomat member. Certified Gangsters introduced the world to New York City gang banging, and it also introduced the world to West Coast rapper, The Game. On August 24, 2004, On My Way to Church was released and debuted at number 18 on the Billboard 200. The album sold over 40,000 copies in its first week and over 200,000 copies altogether. That same year, Jim and Cam gets into a heated argument with Mace on Hot 97.
You already know why you left Harlem. R.I.P. Baby Man and R.I.P. Pop Lottie. That's why you left Harlem. You ran up out of there, Beffa.
I moved from Harlem before that.
Did you have a congregation in Atlanta?
God forgive Jimmy.
What happened with, tell the people what happened with Lottie. Did Lottie escort you out of Harlem before?
Who
Baby Man and Pop Lottie. Ask them about that, Miss Jones. Ask them why
Who are they, Mace?
They actually two guys that passed away. But
Jim Jones was now a rap star, but still kept one foot in the streets. New York City was now filled with Bloods. Jim took the whole blood thing seriously. 9 Trey was now his family. Jimmy was the wild card out the group. He was known for going to nightclubs with 50 Bloods and starting fights. By 2005, he was kicked out of half of the nightclubs in New York City. Like I said earlier, Jim liked to fight. Most of the Dipset members were Bloods, including Jewel Santana and Hell Rell. The rap group made gang banging look good. More people around the world became Bloods. The Diplomats even inspired rap star Lil Wayne to join a Blood gang. The New Orleans rapper even started dressing like the Diplomats. Rockefeller Records was now over. Jay-Z and Dame Dash parted ways and let the Diplomats be free agents. Jim was comfortable working with Koch Records. He immediately began working on his sophomore album.
Even with Jewels, they all know I put my life on the line for this. I've been to trial for this. I've been on America's Most Wanted for this. I've been on gang files for this.
Carlos Thompson, also known as Zoo, was one of Dipset's enforcers. On June 16, 2005, Zoo was accused of handing a 13-year-old boy a gun to kill a 15-year-old by the name of Phoenix Garrett. Garrett was allegedly in the neighborhood selling bootleg Dipset CDs when he was approached by Zoo and a gang of other 9 Trey members. Jim was allegedly present at the time. After approaching Garrett, a confrontation erupted and 15-year-old Phoenix Garrett was shot and killed. This incident caused a lot of problems in Harlem. Some people blamed Jim Jones for Garrett's death. According to Garrett's older brother, Jim could have stopped the whole thing, but instead, he just stood there and watched. Zoo would go on the run for years. This is when Harlem's OG Gangster Lou began feuding with Jim. Gangster Lou is a living legend in Harlem. In the 80s, he ran with Rich Porter, Azzy Faison, and Alpo Martinez. Gangster Lou allegedly put in a whole lot of work in the streets. Jim felt like he needed some extra help. He reached out to a gangster from Chicago who went by the name Jojo Capone. Jojo Capone was a friend of Cam and Jim. The two met Capone back when Cam was living in Chicago in 2001. Capone introduced Jim to a crew of wild Puerto Ricans from the Lower East Side of Manhattan. Roberto Guzman Rosado Jr., also known as True Life, grew up in Smith Projects. Smith Projects was a wild and dangerous place. By the early 2000s, True Life and his crew were known for putting in work. After meeting Jimmy, they instantly became his muscle. Many say that Gangster Lou had Jim fearing for his life. According to True Life, he gave Jimmy a bulletproof vest to wear. Dipset began dissing their former boss Jay-Z in songs. This feud would go on for years. It all started when Cam signed to Rockefeller back in 2001. The Diplomats walked around the office as if they owned it. Damon Dash obviously gave them more freedom than he gave the other artists that were on Rockefeller. Within months, Cam had a small office. He stole beats and even erased Jay-Z's verse off the Old Boy remix. Things really went left when Dame planned to make Cam vice president of Rockefeller Records. Around this time, Dipset gets into it with members of BMF at a Miami nightclub. The BMF members poured alcohol on the Diplomats as they entered the nightclub. Jim and several others decided to go upstairs to confront the BMF members, and a brawl take place. Some BMF members were even stabbed. The word quickly gets back to BMF leader Big Meech, and the crew plans to get revenge the following night. The following night, BMF went to the same nightclub 40 men strong. The Diplomats sneak out of the nightclub and make their way back to the hotel. Before they could make it back to the hotel, they were surrounded by armed BMF members. The BMF members were only looking for Jimmy, so it's safe to assume that Jimmy was the one who did the stabbing the night before. Jim breaks and runs, managing to escape. Cam talked it out with the BMF members, and a meeting was later scheduled between the two parties. Only Jim and a few others came to the meeting. Cam didn't attend the meeting for some reason. Jim and his crew were outnumbered at the meeting. Big Meech respected Jim for having the heart to attend the meeting. BMF and Dipset ended up becoming good friends. On August 23, 2005, Jim Jones' sophomore album, Harlem, Diary of a Summer, was released and debuted at number 5 on the US Billboard 200 chart. It sold over 70,000 copies in its first week. Freaky Zeke was Jim's right-hand man. The two were like brothers. A lot of the times that Jimmy was attacked, Freaky Zeke wasn't present. On February 5, 2004, Freaky Zeke was sentenced 35 months in prison for running an ecstasy ring. He wouldn't be released until November 20, 2006. Around this time, Jim was planning to do his own thing. According to Cam, Jim asked him what he thinks about faking a beef. This didn't sit right with Cam. He told Jim that would only confuse the fans. Jim was planning on starting his own label, Bird Gang Records. He even had a few artists who he planned to put out. One of the artists was a young smooth guy from Harlem by the name of Charlie Rambo, better known as Max B. Max B tried to get signed to Dipset, but Cam didn't feel his style at the time. Jim seen the greatness in Max B and made him a member of the Bird Gang. The following year, Jim Jones released his most successful album, Hustler's P.O.M.E., Product of My Environment. Max B was featured on most of the album. According to Max B, he even wrote the album's single We Fly High. Hustler's Poem debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 and sold over 100,000 copies in its first week. Although the album didn't even go gold, the single We Fly High achieved platinum certification. Cam and Jim's friendship began fading away. It all started when Jim and Chrissy began dating. According to Cam, Jim was spending a lot of money on Chrissy and not sending his incarcerated friends any. Cam then decides to be petty and get t-shirts made calling Jim Tricky Ricky. That was it for Jim. He decided to keep his distance from Cam. It was so bad that Jim didn't even want to work with anyone who worked with Cam. This was the ending of the Dipset. According to Jim, Cam wasn't a good leader. After the release of Cam's 4th studio album, Purple Haze, Cam began distancing himself from many Dipset members. Everyone had love for Cam, but they rocked with Jimmy a lot more. Members such as Juelz Santana, Hellrail, and even Cam's blood cousin Freaky Zeke were all closer to Jim. During this documentary, I noticed that Cameron didn't participate in any of the brawls, and Jim was always the frontline soldier.
Man, I took it with a smile. Even niggas doubted me, down me. When I was on trial, told me I need to take the plea. Take what plea? We don't take pleas. You heard? By the grace of God, the trial gets dismissed because they couldn't find enough evidence of a shootout that happened on uptown over Cameron.
Jim was now a boss himself, and the 9 Trey blood gang was now heavy in other states such as Atlanta, North Carolina, and Virginia. Jim could have become the East Coast Suge Knight if he had wanted to, but he was smart. Jim knew that he was being watched by the police. Since the early 2000s, both Cam and Jim were on the hip-hop police watch list. Although Jim didn't abuse his power, he allegedly decided to stop paying for protection in New York to non-9 Trey members.
Chicago ran down on you at the hip-hop summit, man. It was 100,000 Muslims in there. They ran down on you there. You disrespecting Farrakhan. Now here you running with 99 Muslims.
Hold on.
Hold on. Like,
he's saying the kid said he's the Kufi smacker. The Kufi's a religious piece. You know what I mean?
Jojo Capone and True Life were no longer getting paid by Jimmy. This is when True Life began attacking Dipset. Not only did he allegedly rob Jim for his jewelry, but he also allegedly jumped on Cam outside a nightclub. According to Cam, he didn't even know who True Life was. True Life was one nasty boy. Now let me clear this up. When I say nasty boy, I'm not talking about the boys Janet Jackson was talking about back in the day. When I say nasty boy, I'm talking about a real stepper. Someone who put in work. In my old neighborhood, we called our ops nasty boys. When they came sliding on our block, we said, "Here come those nasty boys again." Or sometimes we'd call up the big homies and say, "A car full of nasty boys just came through." True Life attacked Dipset whenever he could. He even allegedly robbed Dipset's affiliates Purple City. Around this time, Cam and rapper 50 Cent were feuding. Jim began working with 50 Cent and G-Unit, confusing fans. This made Dipset look weak. Everyone always looked at Jim as Cam's brother, friend, business partner, and enforcer. It was clear that something was wrong. To be real, Dipset began looking like snakes. First, they went at Mace, the man who's responsible for their rap careers. Without Mace, there's no Dipset. And then they went at Jay-Z and Rockefeller after they helped them become who they were at the time. If the Diplomats never signed to The Rock, Cameron's career would have went way different. It wouldn't be no Oh Boy, no Hey Ma, no platinum album. After seeing Jim with 50 Cent, that was enough for the fans. Jim began focusing on starting his own record label, Bird Gang Records. He signed Mel Matrix, N.O.E., Max B, and several other up-and-coming artists. Most of the Bird Gang artists were Bloods. A Far Rockaway rapper by the name of Stack Bundles was another artist Jimmy signed to the label. Bundles began taking over the NYC underground rap scene. He would have probably been Bird Gang's biggest artist, but unfortunately, he was shot and killed on June 11, 2007. The following month, Max B was released from jail on a $2 million bail. Max was forced to sell his publishing to Jim for the bail money. This would later cause problems between Jim and Max B. Max B would later leave Bird Gang and immediately begin dissing Jim. He would eventually hook up with South Bronx rapper and founder of Coke Boy DVD, French Montana. Jim prevented Max B from putting out any commercial releases. For months, Max B and French Montana went at Jim Jones and even allegedly stood outside of his studio one night. The beef lasted until Max B went to prison in June of 2009. He was sentenced to 75 years in prison for murder, conspiracy, and robbery. Jim planned for Bird Gang Records to be the brother of Diplomats Records. It was something like the New World Order. Diplomats was the white and black crew, and Bird Gang was the black and red. But Cam had other plans. According to Cam, he had the Bird Gang name trademarked, forcing Jim to change his label's name.
He started doing this Bird Gang and all this and I'm like, you know, I'm thinking, why you branching off or whatever? So I copyright the name just in case. He had these artists, and then, like, I'm not throwing no shade. You have Max B, you got Stack Bundles, them two alone. Put them out. You could have ate, you know what I'm saying? Jim kept using them for his albums instead of putting them out.
On March 24, 2009, Pray for Rain was released under E1, Columbia and Sony Music Entertainment. It peaked at number 9 on the US Billboard, 1 on the US Billboard Top Rap Albums, and 2 on the US Billboard Top R&B/Hip Hop Albums. Dipset was now in Jim's rear view. If you enjoying this documentary, please hit that like button and subscribe now. It only takes 1 second. Since 2015, Drugstore Films has been bringing you dope content. We were the first to do a story about rapper Tupac's murderer. We were the first to do a drill documentary. The first who labeled rapper King Von a serial killer. The first to do a Flyboy Gang documentary. We should be one of the top street channels on YouTube. Show us some love and ride with us to the top. And don't forget to check out our new horror movie Junior Heist. It'll be streaming on multiple platforms soon. Thank you.
It's pretty bad, sure.
Monet, people getting killed left and right.
I know, Ma. I'll be fine.
I'll be there in like 5 minutes.
Last month, Roxburgh Sheriff Jason Dawson gave the town a 6 o'clock emergency curfew. Only essential workers are allowed outside after 6 p.m. Grocery stores, restaurants, and shopping centers will all continue closing at 6 p.m. until further notice.
You come to the Halloween party tonight.
A Halloween party?
Who the hell is Junior High, sir?
All right, class, listen up. There'll be no school tomorrow. Unfortunately, the 3 girls that were missing, it was found dead in the park bathroom.
We found the heads in the sink. Took a while to match the heads to the bodies.
Jim was now being managed by a young Yandy Smith. Back in 2005, Yandy left her management gig at Violator to manage Jim. Yandy was a go-getter. She worked with huge artists such as LL Cool J and Missy Elliott. In 2009, Jim put out a documentary DVD by the name of This Is Jim Jones. He also released a film called Red Apples Falling. In 2010, Jim and Dame Dash started a record label together by the name of Splash Records. Things quickly fell apart and caused tension between Jim and Dame. In 2011, Jim and his girlfriend Chrissy had supporting roles in the VH1 reality show Love and Hip Hop. They're the reason the show became a huge success. Chrissy basically tries to get Jim to marry her. The couple returned on season 2 and then left the show to star in a spin-off Chrissy and Jim series. Chrissy was ready to get married and Jim wasn't sure. Since the 80s, Jim knew of Chrissy. Back then, she allegedly dated kingpins such as Rich Porter and Alpo Martinez. In 1996, Jim and Chrissy met at a marketplace in Harlem. Jim was with Mace. At the time, Jim didn't have enough money to pull a woman like Chrissy, but the two would meet again years later when the Diplomats was the hottest thing in the streets. 80% of the rappers in the game were now dressing like Jim. In 2006, Jim began changing hip-hop fashion. Baggy clothes slowly became corny. Everywhere you went, you seen fellas wearing tight breeches and tight shirts. Jim even influenced guys to wear tight underwear. Those big boxers that we all wore were now embarrassing, and regular leather belts were now only for old men. Jim made fancy belts and pocket chains popular. It was now cool to dress like a rock star. Jim began working out and getting buff. That made him look even better in tight clothes. More guys began hitting the gym for the same reason. So it's safe to say that Jim inspired people to get in shape. In the winter of 2011, Yandy quit managing Jim. Unfortunately, Yandy and Chrissy didn't get along. The two went at it for years until Yandy decided to walk away. Jim and Chrissy even allegedly tried to get Yandy beat up by a group of Chrissy's friends one night at a hotel. Lucky for Yandy, her boyfriend Mendices Harris was present that night. Mendices is a gangster from Harlem who was knee-deep in the drug game. He allegedly made $100,000 a day in the streets. Mendices was good friends with most of the Dipset members. After the altercation at the hotel, Mendices and Jim gets into a fist fight back in New York.
Came back to New York, he said he wanted to squash it and make sure that nothing came out of Miami. And then when he came over there to my projects, which he stupid nigga didn't even know that was my projects, he just thought he had what's called from a federal prison.
Hold on, Mendices. Hold on, let me just catch everybody up to speed. Jim and Mendices had words exchanged in Miami over Chrissy and Yandy. And basically, they was going to squash it in New York. So Jim goes to Mendices' projects to go meet him. That's where Mendices at in this story right now.
Right. So when I got over there, he was talking calm at first, and then he just started getting loud. And then when he got loud, that was it.
Over the next several years, Jim continued putting out music and acting. He managed to stay relevant while other former Dipset members were forgotten. In February of 2017, Jim signed a deal with Roc Nation. That same month, he went on Hot 97 and had the biggest interview in his career with Funk Flex. In the interview, Jim sends shots at his former friend Cameron. Cam fires back just one day later live on Instagram. The public feud didn't last long. The two were back friends in the fans' eyes. But the truth is, Jim and Cam still weren't seeing eye to eye. On April 13, 2018, Jim Jones' sixth studio album, Wasted Talent, was released under his new label Vamp Life and Empire Records. Cam was featured on 2 of the tracks on the album. Wasted Talent received good reviews from critics. Hip Hop DX rated the album a 3.8 out of 5 stars, calling the album classic NYC music. Around this same time, a member of the 9 Trey Bloods was becoming a huge rap star. Tekashi 6ix9ine made 9 Trey more famous than Jim Jones did. Back in 2018, 6ix9ine was the face of social media. It was impossible to go a day without seeing his face. He was the king of trolling. Kefano Jordan, also known as Shotty, was one of Jim's little homies. Shotty joined the 9 Trey Blood gang at an early age. He grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, New York City. Shotty was known for putting in work. He was one of the top 9 Trey members in Brooklyn. Shotty, Mel Murder, and Anthony Harv Ellison were all now considered OG Blood members. When a 22-year-old 6ix9ine came around, many of the 9 Trey Blood members seen an opportunity to make a lot of money, and Shotty took full advantage of the situation. The 9 Trey Bloods made Treyway Records look like the old death row. The 9 Trey Bloods only looked at 6ix9ine as a ladder to come up. The top members called him food. When 6ix9ine stopped feeding some members, he was robbed and kidnapped. This is when the 9 Trey Bloods began extorting the young rapper. Around this time, 6ix9ine began accusing Shotty of sleeping with his child's mother, and the feds began popping up about the Barclay shooting. 6ix9ine no longer wanted to work with Shotty and affiliate himself with 9 Trey. He was now doing his own thing.
Boy, that's what he trying to do. That's what he trying to do. He trying to live. He trying to separate himself.
That's cool, but now he gotta get violated.
Yeah, super violated. Super duper. So Ain't too much he can really do unless he go run around with 100 armed securities all day. You know what I'm saying? He gonna get shot at pay.
He ain't getting enough money for that.
On November 18th of that year, Shotty, 6ix9ine, Mel Murder, Fubanga, Ish, and Crippy were all arrested and charged with federal RICO and firearm charges. 6ix9ine began cooperating with the feds. He told them everything he knew about the 9 Trey Bloods, and he tried his best to bring down Jim Jones. Many wonder why Jim haven't been indicted after the tapped phone call with Mel Murder. Well, after having one of my lawyer friends listen to the tape, I can tell you that Jim didn't give out any orders. It's clear that Jim was only giving a friend advice.
And according to their report, they say Jones was in the back seat of a car that Coweta County deputies pulled over after a chase. Jones was arrested on possession of drugs and a handgun.
In 2020, during the COVID-19 pandemic, Jim started Quarantine Studios. Quarantine Studios was a virtual recording studio that helped artists collaborate from anywhere in real time. The following year, Dipset reunites to do a versus battle against their old music rivals, The Lox. To Jim, this versus battle was a big deal. He really wanted to perform at Madison Square Garden, but Cam didn't really want to do the versus battle. He had plans to go on a Dipset reunion tour. According to Cam, Jim practically begged him to do the versus battle. Cam ended up working out a sweet deal with producers Swiss Beats and Timberland. The Lox versus Dipset battle was huge. In the mid-2000s, the two camps took over the streets with their mixtapes. Dipset and D-Block kept hardcore NYC music alive those days. It was clear that Dipset didn't come prepared for the battle. The Lox walked away with an easy victory. In 2022, Jim Jones and Brooklyn rapper Mano formed a duo by the name of Lobby Boys. Back in 2009, Jim and Mano had a minor beef after Mano's Rumors song was released. In the song, Mano said that he heard that Cameron was robbed in California, and he said that he also heard that Freaky Zeke snitched on the robbers. This made Jim upset. He would later run into Mano in an Atlanta shopping mall. Jim was with 30 to 40 Bloods, and Mano was only with 3 other people. Fortunately, the two rappers talked it out like men and later became good friends. On May 27, 2022, the Lobby Boys album was released. The album was inspired by both Jim and Mano's project Lobbies. This was one of the best albums that came out that year. Harlem and Brooklyn came together and created a solid project. Cam and Mace reunites and become good friends again. It was only right. It took Cam years to realize that he was in the wrong. After appearing on a few podcasts together, the two decided to start their own podcast in January of 2023. It Is What It Is quickly became one of the biggest sports shows on YouTube. In December of 2024, 50 Cent appeared on Cameron's podcast as a special guest. During the interview, Cam and 50 jokes about Jim switching sides back in 2007. Jim appears on the Justin LaBoy show weeks later and sends shots back at Cam and 50 Cent. Days later, Cam responds on the Is What It Is podcast. Many believe that Cam took it too far and even started the whole thing. From the outside looking in, Cam looked like a horrible friend.
You are not from Harlem. Why do you keep thinking that you are from Harlem, bro? You are not from Harlem. I did not grow up with you, my nigga. I did not grow up with you. Contrary to what you believe, I did not grow up with you. You are from the Bronx. Did your grandmother live? Did your grandmother live in Harlem? Yes. Did you come see her? Yes.
In February of 2025, Jim Jones' 8th studio album At the Church Steps was released. The album's single This Still Harlem became a minor hit. Jim became the only trending New York rapper around this time. After dropping This Still Harlem, Jim immediately dropped a remix featuring Juelz Santana, Dave East, Susie, and Vado. Jim didn't stop there. He dropped the album's next single Jomo, sending shots at Mace and Cam. Jomo became one of Jimmy's best songs in his 23-year career. Not only did he send shots at Mace and King, but he used the same rapping style that Mace taught him as well. In the video, Jim proves to the world that he's an official Blood member. Some of the video was shot in Compton on Piru Street, the block of one of the original Piru sets. At the Church Steps is one of Jim's best albums. Jim Jones is now a top 10 New York rapper and a top 5 Harlem rapper. You can't talk about Harlem without mentioning Jim Jones. He remained relevant for over 20 years. Jim Jones always stayed in the swing of things. Everything from fashion, music, business, and even gang banging, Jimmy made it all look good. So is Jim Jones really from Harlem? Yes, he is. The proof is in this documentary. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace. I'll see you guys next time.